Hey everybody, welcome back to another box office recap. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. Sorry for a little bit of a late recap. Just had a few videos that I wanted to post up first, and just been busy with work and other things here and there. Um, so finally getting around to doing this, So let's recap February. Let's see what happened in February. Before we do that, as we always do when it comes to these kinds of videos, I like to give you guys my look at how I measure box office. So if it's with production and marketing, we as that stands, we just look at that alone in that equation. I times that by two in terms of the overall investment cost. So production and marketing combined together, times that by two, and that would be the break-even point. Um, now, uh, Theatrical distribution is another factor that we have to consider here because all these films that we're talking about have made their way to theaters. And when it comes to the theatrical distribution, usually theaters take a certain percentage cut when it comes to the ticket sales and the revenue made from it, box office. So if it's domestic, it could be around 50%, whereas then the foreign markets, depending on where you're at, it's 40%. So in total, really, with the film as it stands, with production and marketing, and the distribution on top of that, this is really what you should be looking at when you look at everything as it stands. When you consider the production marketing investment as it stands, like let's say the movie cost $50 million and then it was another 50 to market it, that $100 million in total times that by four, that's how much the movie has to make in order to see them make the money that they need to make off the movie, which would really be $200 million. But because of theatrical distribution being involved, they have to do more money. They have to make more money in order to meet their thresholds. So hopefully that makes sense. Um, but just relaying, I am including marketing expenses or anything related to that, whether that being reshoots or anything specifics. But if that information is not available, I'm just judging purely on the production expenses alone and doing the same system here. So hopefully that all makes sense. And yeah, so we will now look into February and see how things worked out there. So let's get into it. All right, first release we're going to talk about is The Strangers Chapter 3. Now, we did talk about The Strangers trilogy in a video where I broke it down, and we talked about how I believe this trilogy basically is a failure. And it seems, though, that is coming to fruition because Chapter 3 has pretty much bombed. And when you break it down here, had a budget of 8.5 million, no marketing expenses disclosed, as far as I read, so 8.5 million as it stands. Timesing that by two, the film would have to do at least $17 million, but a gross requirement of at least $34 million. So this is where it would really have to be at to make money. Theatrical gross so far, we're looking at $9.16 million. So as the studio, this case being Lionsgate, they've made about $4.52 million or as high as $4.94 million off of this movie. So yeah, very much so a failure. And I think it's a lot to do with just a lack of interest and, a lack of marketing too. I do not recall any marketing for this whatsoever. Very, 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 very minimal marketing on this front. So I think that this was all this was all done in one big whack, which I don't agree with. Doing three features at one time, I think is very problematic, and it doesn't really financially it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But creatively speaking, it could also be hard to manage. And from what I read, it seemed like kind of nightmarish, where they're shooting scenes for chapter 3 and the next day they're shooting scenes for chapter 2. It's like, very troubling in that way. But yeah, interest for this seemed to have fell off really quickly, and you can go check out the video I did. I'll leave it at the end of this video. It's a cheap plug there. um, about how this trilogy has kind of fell apart over the past few years, but yeah, it's met its fate, and it's a sad fate, unfortunately. Now, next one we're going to be looking at is Solo Mio. Um, this is the second film so far this year to have made a profit. This is from Angel Studios, a little bit of a, like I said, kind of a controversial company, at least politically speaking. Um, this is the rom com with Kevin James, and uh, yeah, this did fairly really well. Budget of 4 million. We don't have any marketing expenses attached to it. I don't think there was really any, as far as I saw. 4 million as it stands, so 8 million it would need to make in order to break even. Gross requirement of at least 16 million. Theatrical gross went off to do 24.35 million, and when you break that down, studio gross, in this case Angel, made about 12.17 million, or as high as 13.39 million dollars. So this is a success story. I think it's a lot to do with just how low it actually is in terms of an investment. Literally $4 million, and having some kind of notability with a name like Kevin James. Um, and also playing to a demo, being in the February season, being something of, I believe, a rom com, as far as I can tell. I'm not familiar with the movie, incidentally, but just judging by the poster, it seems like that's kind of what it's getting at. Um, so so it had all that going for it, and uh, and it made money. It made money because of that. So again, studios, smaller budgets are usually better bets, especially when you're taking on more original based content. So good on Angel, good on them for making some good profit and being the uh, second of the success stories of this year so far. Next film we're going to talk about is Dracula. This is Luc Besson's version of Dracula. We've told the Dracula story like thousands of times now. We literally had a Nosferatu literally like 2 years ago, Robert Eggers' version. This is a film that was mainly released in France, but it had an expansion here in the U.S. And I figured just to talk about it. So, had a budget of at least 53 million. No marketing expenses, as far as I can tell, or any major ones, at least here in the U.S. That is 53 million as it stands. So timesing that by 106 million is what it would need to make. Gross requirement though of at least $212 million. Theatrically speaking, as far as it's done, both in France and in the U.S. combined, $24.63 million. And studio-wise, in this case, SND, the French company, 17.96 million, or as high as $18.59 million. Yeah, uh, yeah, not great, not great. I think it's a lot to do with just isolating, the release. This mainly being in a specific place in the world, not being expanded out to other markets. I think kind of hurt it a little bit without that awareness. Also, I think that also by in some cases notability, because the Dracula story has been told so many times. Like I said, we had literally a Dracula story like 2 years ago, and we've had like origin stories. We've had remakes of the original book by Bram Stoker. We had that one that Coppola did with Gary Oldman. So many of the story has been told. So I think it's both fatigue, but primarily I think it's also just because there was not an expansion or unawares to that expansion out to the North American market. So yeah. But as it stands, even if there were a lot of attention on this, I just don't think that it was going to get a lot of people to go into the theater and check this out. So, all right, next film we're going to talk about is Wuthering Heights. So this is an interesting case because, as you could see, Financially, it has not done so well, but it's about the severity of how bad it's done that I think is very interesting. So, has a budget of 80 million, and the marketing costs are an interesting thing. So, I'm gonna leave a photo up here if I still have it on my phone. I hope I didn't delete it. Um, where I found that the marketing costs are actually more than the production itself. According to what I read on Deadline, they are about $100 million. $100 million that was put into marketing this film. So if that is true, the investment as it stands would be around $180 million. So times that by two, the film would have to do at least $360 million. That's how much the movie itself needs to do. But in order to make that kind of money after theatrical distribution with the cuts involved, the gross requirement on this is $720 million. And with a theatrical gross of at least $197.2 million, you are not getting anywhere close to that number, especially when we break that number down. The studio, in this case Warner Brothers, has only made about $86.25 million or as high as $89.93 million. I think that this is a largely the investment, how much it's cost, that has really brought down the potential for how much it could have made for the company. I think little bit is also to do with just by perception, because if you guys remember that first trailer that came out for this movie, um, it is very different compared to what the second trailer was for this movie. They're like polar opposites. The first teaser made this look like an erotica, whereas the second trailer made it look like a casual romance. So I don't know if the film itself is more sexually charged. You know, um, I would assume that it is because the teaser is more of an impression, I believe, of a movie than the official trailer is. Um, you guys let me know if you saw the movie, but a little bit of that probably also took shape on this. But as it stands, the investment as it stands, if it is to be true that the marketing has cost as much as it did, that is what really killed the financial potential for this. So so yeah, gotta stop spending money like this, guys. It's just it's not healthy for your films. All right, next film we're gonna look at is Goat. Me and my bro saw this. I forget if we both talked about it. I think it was just me who did the review, but we both saw this together. It was okay. It wasn't anything spectacular or terrible. It was okay. Um, this had a budget of at least 80 million, so roughly around the same price as Wuthering Heights was, but no marketing cost are disclosed, so we don't know anything about that. So as stands, investment is at least 80 million. Break-even point on this would have to be 160 million, but the gross requirement on this would be 320 million dollars. So theatrical gross so far is around 132.36 million dollars. Studio-wise, in this case, Sony uh, is looking at 60.53 million or as high as 64.32 million coming back to them. Um, I think this is largely, again, budget, because looking at how much it's made so far, I mean, if this was about half of as much as it's cost, right? If this was like 40 million, you do the math, right? This would need to do 160 million in terms of a gross requirement. So theatrically speaking, it would be on track for that. But because it is a more heavier price tag on it, I think it's a lot to do with the animation and some of the voice cast. That's part of it. Um, they that's what kind of killed it a little bit, you know. Um, and because obviously, some people seeked it out. I mean, making over $100 million is, that tells you that there is some kind of audience out there for it. But I just think that the budget was the thing that's kind of holding it back. Um, so yeah, so I think it's a lot to do with the budget on this end, and partially to do also, I think, with just lack of appeal because it's not a major IP. It's its own thing, right? And like I said, and like I was gonna say, like I said, but I haven't even brought this up yet. Um, It is also the only thing so far that is for kids. Okay, we're gonna have Hoppers this weekend, but for that month, Goat was the only thing for kids. So that also probably contributed to how much it's made so far. But its downfall, I believe, is just how much it's cost. Half of that budget would have set this up to be successful, but for it to be where it's at, that's just not a good thing. So. All right, next film we're going to look at is Crime 101. This is Amazon, Amazon Studios. Yeah, so this had a budget of 90 million, so a little more pricey compared to those other two films. No disclosure on marketing expenses, so 90 million as it stands. Break even point on this would have to be 180 million. Right? Yeah, right. I didn't mess up on the other one. No, I didn't mess up. Sorry. I just had to make sure. 90 million, so 180 million on this end, and then 360 million as a gross requirement. Theatrical gross so far, $57.95 million. Studio wise, Amazon in this case, 26.27 million, or as high as $27.82 million. Yeah, this is a failure. This is a flop. Amazon will say what they say because, you know, I think that the reason for this is pretty obvious. You're going up against two other movies that are going to have more notability, and you're doing the thing that Hollywood is betting on sometimes, which is that they are betting that the stars are enough, and this is not the case of that. This is at least for me when I saw the trailer, it looked like a very, very watered down version of Heat. You know, it didn't look like anything more special than that, and also a lack of marketing. I did not recall seeing a lot of marketing for this, but when it was coming out, a few advertisements maybe here and there, but nothing eye catching, about this movie. So that's the other thing too. But but hey, Amazon will call it as they'll say, hey, it's not what it does in theaters, it's what it does on streaming. So as tradition with looking at Amazon's offerings, we'll just you know move along because clearly if that's the case, then this movie is going to do absolutely fine. So why put it out in theaters then if that's the case? All right, next film is Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. This is Gore Verbinski's next film. You guys may know him for Pirates of the Caribbean. I believe he directed the first three, right? I could be wrong. But he had a film come out, which probably none of you saw, at least as far as the box office is concerned. Um, 20 million at its budget, and 20 million as stands as an investment. We don't know any marketing expenses attached to it. Break even point on this would be 40 million. Gross requirement on this would need to be 80 million. Theatrical gross so far, 8.32 million. Studio wise, in this case, Briarcliff Entertainment, 4.12 million, or as high as $4.51 million. I think this is purely to do with just that, a lack of marketing. Um, I don't recall any marketing for this outside of like one trailer. Um, that's really it. That's really it. I also don't think that it has that type of power, even if it had that marketing push attached to it, to really resonate, because it's kind of doing its own real thing. It's not really catering to certain mentalities, as far as I saw from the trailer. Um, so I think purely it is to do with a lack of marketing on this end that kind of killed the interest or the potential of what it could have done financially. So. All right, next one we're going to look at is Psycho Killer. Now, you talk about marketing. Yeah, this is definitely the case of no marketing whatsoever. Um, this is Disney's latest offering because this is from their 20th Century Studios. And as far as I read, this had a budget of at least 10 million. I could be wrong on that. I have to fact check it later. Um, Investment, or you can fact check me in the comments if you want. 10 million. Investment wise and marketing wise, there was no marketing costs or disclosed. In my book, there wasn't any. Investment 10 million as it stands, as far as we know. So 20 million as break-even point. Gross requirement 40 million. Theatrical gross 2.47 million. Studio-wise, in this case Disney, they've made about 1.23 million, or as high as 1.35 million dollars. Yeah, I don't know why there was like no marketing for this whatsoever. I don't even recall a trailer. I don't think there even was a trailer, right? I could be wrong about this. Like, I maybe there was a trailer. I remember they at the release of this movie, they started putting out clips, not a TV spot, not a brand new trailer, clips. So I think that they were not confident about this at all. Like, they were not confident. Um, and as far as like I've seen, the reception to it was not great. So maybe that, but if you're wanting to make like 10 million, like, if they had pushed it a little bit, I honestly think that they would have done something. I don't know, but like, not saying they would have gotten to like where they needed to be, but maybe make it a little more money than what they made. So just dump this on streaming. I don't know why it again was something that should have probably been dumped on streaming. If you had no faith in it, why put it in theaters? Just, you know, or if you're setting yourself up for failure like Amazon, where you put a whole bunch of money into something, you know, like I'm looking at you, Project Hail Mary, this month. Um, like sometimes going the route of streaming is a way to cover your ass versus having it out on Front Street. But yeah, they didn't have any faith in this, so I don't know why this went into theaters. If they weren't going to market it or tell anyone about it, not sure what they were expecting from this. All right, next up is I Can Only Imagine 2. This is, of course, the sequel to that, to I Can Only Imagine, which came out a few years back. It was a Christian-based film, went off and did fairly well. This has a little more of a pricey tag attached to it compared to the original. This is an $18 million investment now. We don't have any marketing expenses attached to this. So investment as it stands, 18 million. A break-even point on this case now would have to be 36 million. Gross requirement would need to be $72 million. So far, the film has done about $14.13 million. And the studio, in this case being Lionsgate, they've collected about 7.06 million, or as high as $7.77 million. I think this has a lot to do with lack of marketing. Because I do remember the original doing fairly well, but it was also very small budgeted, so there wasn't like as high of a threshold to hit. And this has the same case where it doesn't need to do crazy numbers, right? But I think it's a lack of marketing in this case. I don't think that Lionsgate put up the money much to market it. But because, I also will say that I don't think that religious storytelling hits as well. Very rarely does it really do that. I mean, we saw last year with the King of Kings where that ended up doing well. So this could have been that, but I think that it was a lack of marketing in this case from Lionsgate. So again, just adding to the list of Lionsgate, like they just can't poll, bro. Like they have such a hard time polling audiences, and I feel like they could have had something here, but they just didn't choose to market it heavily enough, and because of that, people probably didn't even know this was out, and it just kind of went by. So, all right, next film we're going to look at is How to Make a Killing. Yeah, speaking of lack of marketing, actually, this is A24. This is Glenn Powell. He's kind of been one of those faces that Hollywood's been trying to push, as like a leading man figure. And well, I think that whole idea has probably now died because of this film and just his track record lately. So this had, according to what I read, 15 million as its budget. We don't know any marketing expenses attached to it. So 15 million as it stands, 30 million is its break-even point, and a gross requirement of at least $60 million. Theatrical gross so far, $6.33 million. Studio in this case being A24. They've made about at least maybe 3.15 million or as high as $3.47 million. Now, I should have said at the start also, this is just a summation. All right, these are not like what I'm saying is like the numbers. This is just a summation of what they probably have made off this movie, just so we're clear on that. But yeah, this is a flop, big flop, and this is again the streak of failures coming from the specific man. I mean, we've had Twisters where he was the leading man, and that didn't do too great. We had The Running Man last year, which really didn't do great, and now we have this. So so I think that it's probably it's probably not going to be the case for him. Going to be a leading man in the future, or at least a substantial way. Um, you know, it's just the thing that Hollywood does nowadays, really just push certain kinds of people, and just lately, it's not the case. You know, the only person that they've pushed that has financially made sense is Timothy Chalamet. Um, I don't particularly like him as an actor, but financially he's pulled. He starred in movies, and a lot of those because of franchises, right? Dune, Willy Wonka, whatever else he's appeared in. Like they're franchises, right? Not necessarily when he's on his own, but it's because of the stuff that he decides to star in is what puts him in a certain position. This is not that guy. This guy, he's tried to branch in that franchise route as well, but a lot of what he's gotten himself into is just not as noteworthy. So, so yeah, I don't think that they should be pushing him anymore because he's had 3 films now come out and they've all flopped or not made money. So, but we'll see what happens in the future. Hopefully, he gets more work. I'm not saying don't give him any more work. I'm just saying, you know, I just don't think that it wouldn't shock me if studios don't want him to be the poster boy anymore. And finally, the last film we're going to talk about from February is Scream 7. This is, of course, the latest in the Scream franchise, and it's doing well, and it's probably going to go off to do well. Had a budget of 45 million. We don't know exactly what the marketing expenses were, as far as I read. So 45 million as it stands. So break even point would need to be 90 million, and a gross requirement of at least 180 million. Theatrically speaking, so far it is around 104.47 million. So the studio, in this case Paramount, will be seeing around 48.92 million or as high as $52.49 million so far. So I think this is going to end up doing fine. I think by the next like 2 or 3 weeks, I'm pretty sure it's going to end up getting the money that it needs. Um, and in the case of Scream films, they're usually fairly cheap, so they don't have to do as much. Um, there's a reason why we've gotten to 7. It's because they are usually done for cheap, and it's also a notable IP, notable slasher franchise. So, um, there was some, trepidations, me included, with, all the controversy that happened with the film, with people getting fired, for their political views and stuff like that. We talked about that a few times here on the channel, about how I wasn't a fan of those decisions. Um, and then, having to rehaul the film, and then the actress bringing back, I forgot her name, Sydney something, or is that her character name? I forget, but the main leading lady of the Scream series, she didn't come back for the 6th film because of a pay dispute, but now she's back here because the other actors decided to jump ship, and she got a bigger payday. I've heard it was like $7 million, so that contributes a little bit to that budget. Um, yeah, but thankfully, with all that, the film is going to end up doing just fine. So that's a silver lining, and um, you know, it's it's it just goes to show you again that smaller budgets create for less climb, you know. And in terms of just the year so far, first major release to perform well. So everything else was either independently funded, like Markiplier's feature film, or uh, much more independent from the Hollywood scene, or not from a major studio company. So, so I guess congrats to Scream being the first of that this year. But yeah, it's gonna do just fine. So if you're counting at home, that was about, I believe, 11 films that we had just talked about here. And if you compare the successes to the failures, yeah, this was another trying month. Um, yeah, so really only two things have proven to do well. Solo Mio and Scream 7. Scream 7, I'm saying, probably is going to end up doing fine. But a lot of failures still. A lot of failures here. A lot of stuff that is, in my opinion, either not getting the marketing push that it needs, or is just, just too way overpriced. Like these budgets need to be brought down. Like Goat, like I said, it was like 40 million. As you saw, like it would have been fine where it was at. Wuthering Heights spending way too much on its marketing. Like I don't understand why they spent that much. Um, and then for Crime 101, it's like, I get where that money is probably coming from is because of the actors that are involved in this. Um, but again, you got to manage these budgets, man, because that's what kind of kills a lot of these, the financial potential for these. And a lot of these are a lot of just a lack of marketing, in my opinion, or lack of appeal, in some cases. So as it stands for the year so far, we're not off to a good start. Still got a lot of failures compared to the three that have done well so far: Iron Lung, Solo Mio, and Scream 7. So we're in a pretty rough spot in terms of a start, but we got March right now. We got some stuff coming in, so we'll see. But we'll see how everything pans out when it comes to March, because we have films like Hoppers, we have The Bride, we have Project Hail Mary, which we'll see how the hell that does. I am predicting disaster for that. So we got a few offerings here and there. And then, of course, we have April, where we're going to have the Marty movie, which I'm predicting is going to be the first major hit of the year. But we will see. We will see about all that. That is to be seen in the future. But let me know your thoughts about February, how you guys felt about the box office from this month, what movies you saw from this list, and what are your expectations for this month, for March? What do you guys feel films like Hoppers and The Bride are going to do? I'm feeling like it's going to be another down month. I'm just being honest. I really feel it. But that is to be seen. So let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.